and welcome back to the Kindness Code. I'm Carmel Sawbury and I'm here with my bestie, Chelsea Bailey, who has taught me so much about working with children in care, and actually just about being a better and kinder person. And today we're going to talk about the thing, Chelsea, that I think actually has had an impact on all my other relationships, not just about talking to children, and that is about connection, and connection, not correction. It's just really influential about how we have to connect before we want to have any kind of communication with people. So tell me what you know about connection before correction.
Yeah, good. I'm glad that it's something that's really stuck with you, because me too. And that really, it simply is that, it's connection before anything else. And what I've learned is without connection, we really can't do anything. So connection is what we're going to talk about mostly. We'll talk about the correction stuff as well, but really what I want to talk about is the importance of connection in every sense of our lives. We have to be connected to everything around us, to the people in front of us, to be able to do anything, but most importantly for us to be able to heal and to be able to grow.
Fantastic. Because again, it's something that we talk about with children, working, with children in care or children who are dysregulating. And it's about taking that breath and really connecting. So how do we do it? Give me an example of where we could use this.
Well, I think if we just do sort of put a little bit of focus on the correction part to help us really understand why we're talking about it. We're talking about children and the connection that they need. And it sounds quite simple as a sort of concept, but where we probably need to take a moment, readjust and reconnect is when things feel a little bit crazy, when it gets a bit chaotic, when it's busy, when it's loud, we might be getting a bit overstimulated, whatever. They're the moments where we have to maybe reconnect. Let's think about dysregulation. The behavior can feel quite urgent. It can feel like something we want to fix, therefore correct. I like to say connection, not correction, instead of connection before correction, because I'm not trying to correct. I'm just trying to connect. And when we connect, everything else just follows. We're not correcting, we're just creating regulated children, regulated adults. Therefore, we'll get better results in general in our lives if we're regulated. If we're not regulated, if our nervous system's all over the place, we're not operating from the right place. Therefore, the results that we're getting are not what we're looking for. So it really is about just slowing down. And when we've got a dysregulated child, for whatever reason that might be, that we just connect with them in that moment.
Amazing, because the connection part, because often when we're working with children, this kind of behaviour which would get labelled as naughty is actually the child is missing some kind of connection. And so it makes so much sense. I mean, we live in a world where, especially through the school system, there's lots of rules. It's about controlling the kids. It's about correcting their behaviour. It's about fixing them. When in actual fact, often with children, they just need that co-regulation and that connection. So thinking maybe sort of in the residential care setting, give me an example of how this can actually land. Like, what does it mean? So, there's something going on. Give us a really good example of that.
Well, you mentioned the education system, so that's probably a good place to start. I think most parents have experienced their kids not wanting to get up for school, not wanting to go. And we certainly see that a lot in residential care. There's more children than ever that are just not going to school. Lots of avoidance around school, lots of anxiety. So there's definitely lots to do around that. And, the education conversation is much bigger than what we're going to talk about today. But we certainly see that as real difficulty. And so I talked about behaviour feeling quite urgent as something we need to fix. So that can be, we've just got to get to school. We've just got to get out the door and get to school because I've got stuff to do. You've got stuff to do, and so everything becomes quite urgent, and it's, I don't feel well. I don't want to go. It doesn't matter. You do, you're fine. Come on, up you get, whatever. In residential settings, that might look, it might become a little bit more dysregulated, that might escalate a little bit. For me, the advice that I would give is stop focusing on school. It feels like what we're trying to achieve is get this child to school. So it doesn't feel like quite the right equation to say, stop focusing on school when that's the end goal. But actually, don't worry about it. Forget about school, because that's not what this is about. This is about something else, that it might be something connected to school. It could be that having a tough time at school, whatever. But first, we need to figure out, okay, this behaviour is telling me something. You don't want to go to school. There's going to be a reason, and we need to try and figure that out. So I've got to connect with you in this moment to understand it. You need to feel seen. You need to feel heard and validated. If I just keep trying to force you to go to school, begging you to go to school, negotiating with you to go to school, that issue that's going on underneath is going to remain. So we have to try and figure it out together. Once we figure that out and we can reach a place where we're feeling more regulated together, then we will get to school. But we're not going to get there if we're just
Because it would be so, you've got to go to school, you get in trouble if you don't go to school, you need to, and that kind of urgent, kind of forcing, but actually often, I know as a parent, sometimes I just need a hug and a cuddle, and actually we can still do that in children's homes, can't we? We can just really see them and that connection. So we're trying to get a child off to school and they're really not happy about it. What do we say to them? How do we actually literally connect with them, Chelsea?
Well, you're always going to lean on the relationships that you already have. So what works for one child might not necessarily work for another, but you do what you know works with the conversation. But ultimately, you need to just let them know that you see how they're feeling. So, I can see school's feeling really hard today. Do you know what that might be about? That sometimes, just that simple. I can see that it feels hard. Yeah, it is. And maybe it's not about school. Maybe it's about something that's going on after school that I'm really feeling anxious about, or at the weekend, whatever. Sometimes it's about, like I talked about, taking the focus away. So you might just focus on the next thing. That's probably good advice. So schools, we've got all of these steps to go through before we get to school. We've got to get out of bed. We've got to brush our teeth. We've got to get our uniform on. We've got to have our breakfast. So let's pick one of those and do that first. And probably if there's a really big sort of ball of anxiety and avoidance, your best bet is to say, let's put the kettle on. Let's have a cup of tea. Let's, have breakfast together. And let's not worry about the rest right now. So we're taking away that pressure from the child's brain. They're trying to do everything they can. They're fighting me on not wanting to go to school. And I've just said, just don't worry about school right now. So that's immediately, it's gone away. So we can start to now connect, because we're not trying to fight over, you've got to go to school, I don't want to, tough, you've got to, I don't want to. We're not doing that. We're not doing that dance. So now we can just say, do you know what? Let's just go and sit, let's chat, have a hug, whatever it is that you need, and take a breather. And we'll deal with the rest in a little while.
So it sounds really simple. And I guess, so it's slightly different. You're talking about parents, often they've got things to do and things, but actually in residential homes, that's kind of your job. But I know you've told me that sometimes you've just made a cup of tea, you've taken the child in a cup of tea and you've sat there. And actually, often it's only taken 10 minutes of really calming, really breathing and giving them your regulation and being really kind. And then the child will get up and maybe not go to school. They're going to get out of bed and they're going to get to the table and have some breakfast. But it is, we are taught to fix problems, aren't we? We're taught to correct this behaviour, which is classified as naughty or disruptive. But actually, it's that connection, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And, naughty is a really interesting word, isn't it? Because you're right, it's in our vocabulary, isn't it? It's words that we know. And when I was growing up, it was you're being naughty, but that's not language that we tend to use now. We don't use it in our homes. Yeah,
I think it's really part of our society. Children were naughty, weren't they?
Totally, yeah. Kate Silverton, she's got a brilliant book, There's No Such Thing as Naughty, and then she's got another book that There's Still No Such Thing as Naughty, really underpinning that message. But it's brilliant because it's about that whole book really is about this subject. It's not naughty, it's not you're just quote playing up or whatever word you want. That's not what's happening. You are telling me something. You are operating from a different part of your brain right now that is causing you to feel dysregulated, avoidant, anxious, shame, stress, whatever the feeling is that it might be. But you are not at the front of your brain. You are not operating there where it is calm and we are reasoning and thinking straight. So it's not naughty, it's not bad behavior. It is a message and we have to figure it out. And do you know what? You might not get to school today, but we might get this golden nugget of information that we go, oh my gosh, I've just found this out and I didn't know that you were experiencing that. I didn't know that was on your mind. I didn't know you were worried about it. And now this huge weight is lifted off the child's chest and we can work with it and we can do something.
So I guess because children in care especially haven't had that love and connection very, very often. This is kind of typical. Most of the kids in care have had adults that have let them down and haven't deeply connected with them. And if we look at naughty, when a baby cries, we don't say they're being naughty. We know that they're hungry or need their nappy change. If you'd walked in today, Charles, throwing your bags around and effing and blinding, which would never happen, my immediate reaction wouldn't be to tell you to sit down and behave yourself. Mine would be deep empathy, deep concern. And it's interesting with probably the 5 to 20-year-olds, we don't, but society would label a lot of this behaviour as naughty. And actually, what do we do with a baby and what do we do with our adult friends? We connect with them, don't we?
Yeah, totally.
Immediately. And it's when you told me that, it was just like a light bulb moment. It made such sense. I guess it's too difficult because we live in a really busy world where actually people don't have time to take that deep breath and slow down. Let's go over another example maybe because, getting the child off to school. What about if the behaviour is maybe a little more frantic? Maybe something's happened, something's triggered them, and maybe it's quite an outward display of aggression and and something like a very big behaviour that needs a level of de-escalation. How do we do that?
Yeah, it's the same. It really is the same concept. And again, it's really it can feel quite scary, especially if you're new to this industry, if you've not done this job for a long time. You might see these types of behaviours for the first time and feel a little bit alarmed. Your adrenaline starts pumping and you think, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? But we just have to remember we have the skills, we have the knowledge, we know what to do. If we have an urgency to fix it and make it stop, we are cortisol is going to be coming through our body. We're going to be getting stressed, and actually just be in it with them.
Can you just take a breath? So if you're listening, deep
Lovely.
breath. Because that's so important, isn't it?
And do you ever see, you might be scrolling on social media and I'll stop and somebody goes, take a deep breath, drop your shoulders. And I do it every time. And you go, oh God, you forget how tense you are a lot of the time.
You get to breathe.
Yeah, totally.
And I guess because that connection is, how can we connect if we're heightened?
Yeah, and we can't. So we need regulated adults to help regulate our children. If we are dysregulated, if we voice match, if we start shouting, if we are demanding, if we're now throwing around consequences if you don't stop this, those types of things, which can feel in the moment like there's sort of an element of desperation because you just want everyone to be safe, but you also want this child to be regulated and you want it to stop because it's not nice. You don't want things to get broken. You don't want anyone to be hurt. So of course we need to do what we have to do to make the environment safe. But again, it's seeing and it's calm. Keep your voice at the same tone. I can see you having a really tough time. What can we do? What do you need in this moment? It really, really is just slowing it down. If the young person can see a calm adult in front of them that's saying, I'm here for you. We don't need to do this. I am here for you. Whatever you need, I've got you. They're going to feel this adult is in control. This adult is safe. They're going to keep me safe. And there's nothing for them there's nothing that's going to make them escalate. It's really difficult to get into an argument or continue shouting with somebody when they're just really calm, so it's stay close and stay connected. It really is just that simple. And it doesn't mean that it's easy, and it doesn't mean that it's not a bit chaotic sometimes, because it is, and it can be really, really hard. But you have to try and make sure you are able to stay connected and regulated in that moment. If you can't, if it's getting too much, if it's becoming really, really tricky, that's why we have teams in the home and we just say, hey, Carmel, could you just come and step in for me for a moment? I just need to go and take 5 minutes. That's really important. Step away, have a change of pace. That can also be really helpful for a young person. But go take that breather so that you can come back. Okay, I've just had a moment. I'm back.
When we talk about this, it kind of seems obvious. If we were sitting in a classroom and you were talking about therapeutic care, and of course you don't say stop being naughty or don't do that. But actually, even as parents, even walking through the world when we meet people we disagree with, your immediate reaction is to say, I don't agree with you, stop that behaviour. But instead, if we take that breath and I guess ask a question, stay really open-minded and try and connect with them. And again, it feels easy sitting here with your lovely voice, all very calm and wonderful, Chelsea, but actually it's going to be really difficult. So I guess if we think, take that deep breath and then acknowledge how they're feeling and then stay super calm and try and find out, ask some questions. I guess is that the kind of the bite size of how we stay connected?
Yeah. And it's really important to remember you can't reason with anybody if they are super duper dysregulated. If we have got, there might be things being thrown around, we're shouting, there might, whatever that might look like, we can't reason in that moment. We're not the child is not operating from the reason part of their brain. They're in fight or flight in this moment. So that's what's operating, and that's right at the base. So we've got to work all the way through to the front of our our brain, to our cortex at the front, before we can regulate. And you can't jump there. So we have to slow down and you have to meet them where they are. So if they're emotional, if they're angry, if they're, we just have to validate that and see that. If you're trying to reason, it's not going to work. So if if you don't stop this, or if you stop this, then we can. They're going to say, I don't care. I'm not bothered. They do care, but right now they're not thinking about that. So it is really about slowing down. We're connecting with the right part of the brain. And we're going to be in the emotion with them. I can see you. This is really hard. Let it out. I'm here for you. When they calm down and we can do some breathing and we can just sit in the quiet. We don't need to talk. We don't need to solve it. When they are then more regulated, we can then have the conversation. That was really big. It looked like that was really, really hard for you. Do you feel like you're able to tell me what was happening for you at that time? Do you know what that might be about? It feels like it could have been about, we can start to have those conversations. If you don't feel ready to talk to me right now, that's okay. Just know that I'm here. I'm here when you're ready. It's those really small messages.
So really fascinating, because as adults, we've probably all had moments where we've seen red and we know that we're really angry and it won't work. And yet we don't put that on. We don't kind of accept that's happening in children, especially kids who've had a really, really difficult life and haven't had good relationships and safety and connection. So I love that idea that, what we do in the very first instance to de-escalate is ask the questions. But you're kind of taking that one step further, that we don't try and go, okay, they've chilled out a bit, let's try and solve it. No, we have to take it even further and let them really, really get into their calm space, into their calm brain before we do anything with that. Because, again, at stages, I love that, because it felt like you just go, a few open-ended questions, show them loads of love, and then they'll be fixed. But it's not that, is it?
No, it's not that at all. And the sort of post-incident, if you like, is really important as well. So again, when I talk about, you kind of just want to stop it. So we might get to a place where we are regulated and we kind of feel, okay, that was a lot. That was heavy and that was difficult for everybody involved, but we're much calmer now. They're in a room, they're having some time out. And then it can feel like we just want to get on with the night or the day, whatever. You want to just say, okay, that's over with now. Let's get the dinner on, whatever it is. But actually that kind of aftercare is so important as well. We need to now spend the time sitting with that young person. And it doesn't mean that you have to make them talk about it if they're not ready to talk about it, but just being close, keep that connection going. We're not connecting just to make it stop, just to, air quote, correct. That's why I say not correction. We're doing it so that next time we've built safety, we've built trust. And next time when that feeling bubbles up for them again, they know that there's a safety net around them that's going to catch them. And each time that becomes a little bit less and a little bit less until we've got more regulated children that are able to communicate their feelings in safer ways.
So we are retraining their brain, aren't we? I feel like I'd be good at the first bit, and then once they calm down, I'd want to start fixing them then. But I love this. It's like, no, we have to keep that connection going.
Yeah. I spoke to somebody the other day and they were talking about different attachment models. And they talked about this sort of post-incident aftercare, if you like. And they were saying to me that you spend double the time post-incident as the incident. Wow. So they're saying if there's an incident that goes on for 45 minutes, an hour, then it's 2 hours that child needs afterwards to connect, to feel safe, to feel loved, all of those things. If it's 15 minutes, then it's half an hour. And it's just about, it doesn't have to be anything intense, but it's just about letting them know it's okay. Because you think as well, how your body needs time. If your body has been dysregulated for an hour, your nervous system has not been regulated for an hour, the recovery on that is intense. There's cortisol in your body. It feels like a hangover. It's, you feel it. It's visceral. And so it's exhausting. You've had a big cry and you just feel like, I just want to have a sleep now. It really, really is impactful on the body. So that time and staying connected afterwards is really, really important.
I love that, because I think as adults, we know that we've been there and to really understand that this is what these kids are going through. And even if they're our own children, we can't just dive in there and tell them what they did wrong and how we're going to do it better next time, because their whole nervous system's still frazzled, isn't it? And they're not ready for that. They just need to know we're there and they're safe.
Yeah.
There's one other thing I wanted to know, because I think there's potentially people listening going, wow, where's the boundaries? You've got to tell them that they're wrong. But actually, I think it sounds like we're not just going, okay, that behaviour's okay. We're saying, I'm still really here. And it sounds like actually calm, but very hard work to stay there and not just go, oh, it stopped happening, I can go back to doing what I'm doing. So what is it about it's not being permissive? Like, how do we know that it's not just permitting the behaviour?
Mm-hmm. Well, they're two separate things. So we're talking about connecting. We need to connect with the young person. There is no point, as I was saying earlier, trying to reason and put consequences in place mid-incident. We're not achieving anything by doing that. And actually, we're causing the child to just shut down. All you want me to do is stop. You don't see me. You don't understand me. You just care about going home, getting to bed on time, not having to clean up those types of things. So they are two separate things. It doesn't mean that there aren't consequences, if you like, for behaviours. So messaging needs to sound like what happened earlier on, yesterday, whenever, was really, really hard for you. And I'm so sorry that you're feeling that way. And how you feel is always, always valid and is always, always okay. How you manage those feelings is something that we need to work on, because hurting other people is not okay. Being unkind isn't okay. Breaking things in the home isn't okay. So that's the messaging, is how you feel is okay. what you do with those feelings is what we need to work on. That's how we need to figure that out together, because we can't, when we get angry and we lose on a game, throw our iPad across the room and break it, because then, you know, the natural consequence of that is you have a broken iPad now, and we can't just replace that. So, you know, sometimes it's about the natural consequences of things taking course. But if we're just trying to say, you can't do this, and if you do, this is the result, you know, the consequence, then we're not making any headway. We're not doing any real work with understanding the child, and they need to feel it. So again, we can't reason with children until they're in the right part of their brain, when they're regulated. When they are, we can then say, that's when we can have that conversation. Hey, listen, we do need to talk about what happened earlier, because, you know, there were some really big feelings, but what we did with those feelings was not quite okay. A really good thing to do with kids as well is ask them what they think. What do you think we should do about that? What do you think you should do? And you'll have kids going, I'm going to give you all my pocket money for the next year, and I'm going to fix everything. And you know, and we don't need them to do that. You know, they'll be harder on themselves than what we ever would. And it's, you know, it's not premeditated. You know, it was just a moment of where we lost control. And like I said, when they start to feel that safety and that trust, those incidents will become less and less and less. The feelings might still exist, but we're teaching them how to healthily express them.
I could listen to you all day. You make it sound really easy, and I know in the moment it's not, but if we start embedding this idea, and I guess too, the connection isn't just when things are going wrong, isn't it? Because we build up all up that safety net. I absolutely love this, Chelsea. See, you make it sound easy, and we all know it's not. So if anyone listening to this, if they could just take away one top tip, like the one thing they can just go, this is the top line that I learned, what would it be?
Pause, take a breath, breathe, to connect. That really is it. And I think that that's about ourselves as well. I mean, I want to give more than one top tip, because I know there's a few and one is tricky, but it sounds too easy. It sounds too easy to say slow down and take a breath. But I think the other thing that I would say is you need to give yourself grace too. You need to practice some self-love and some self-care too, because actually to stay regulated around somebody that is dysregulated is hard. You are right. It isn't easy. So we have to do the work for us. We have to start to recognize what our own triggers are, what gets our heart rate up, and how do we work on that. And we'll definitely talk about that on another episode.
That's like a whole
for sure. Yeah. But that is so important, because if we're not regulated, no one around us is, you know. So when we talk about co-regulation, borrowing our calm, we've got to bring it. So to connect with the child, my tip is to just slow down. We don't try and fix. We're just going to connect and validate, and practice some self-love and have compassion for yourself.
Thank you, Chelsea. We can take this into our everyday life too, because I think it works with all relationships, but especially if we're working with children. Oh, hey, Chelsea, I absolutely love this. Thank you so much for all the incredible work you're doing and sharing everything that you know. I cannot wait for the next episode.
Oh, thank you so much. We'll see you next time.